Welcome to the new IT. Here we are once again in the new IT studios. Brad, what's going on today in the show? What kind of disruption is happening today?
Lots of stuff, but today we're actually going to talk about something that we all have to do, and that's learning. So what we did is we brought on
Do
an
we
expert.
all have to learn?
Well, I think you're kind of right there. I don't think we really do, but those of us who like to better themselves, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we all do learn.
Right.
When you stump your toe, you learn. Try not to do that again.
Sometimes you actually do it a couple times, so maybe it takes people a little longer.
I've heard leaders are learners, winners are learners. So learning
Absolutely,
is a powerful tool. So
Absolutely.
cool.
So yeah, what we did is we brought on Matthew from Mosaic Learning to help us kind of learn exactly how they're being disruptors. So I'm going to let Matthew introduce himself, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, let's find out about Matthew.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, Brad and Bobby. I appreciate you having me today. I'm Matthew Kraft, Chief Operating Officer here at Mosaic Learning, Columbia, Maryland, and very excited to be talking to you today about how we are disrupting learning and what the next evolution of learning looks like.
That's awesome.
Fun.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm interested, so I just want to dive in. So help me understand. I mean, how are you guys using technology to be a disruptor, and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's not not coincidental that today, I believe it's today, we have the next version or installment of the Matrix series, and so
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
We do.
exciting, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it brings me back to high school, but it's funny. I saw the first version of the Matrix when I was in high school, and you remember the scene with Neo getting hooked in and learning jujitsu and saying more, right? And
Yeah.
so kind of got inspired by that, thinking, well, obviously the science and tech aren't there yet, but would love to be a part of ultimately a vision or a future where learning is removed from walls. And so I spent a good bit of the last 2+ decades really working towards that. And that's really what the vision of Mosaic Learning is here. As I sit here today, we have tens of thousands of students in our systems learning everything from electrical theory to electric trade to, all sorts of different construction techniques to actually learning how skincare products work. And so we have a variety of clients across multiple verticals. We're the largest suppliers of learning to the union member trade businesses. And so that's sort of our sweet spot. And really the future, whether it's through AR, VR, or desktop learning management, or through our mobile application, is to really take learning to the next level, where it's not a pipe, but it's really your eyes that help to basically bring in learning and bring in data. And then all the interfaces themselves kind of adapt around you, so that we maximize learning outcomes and we shorten the path between someone learning and information and mastering a skill. And so that's what we're about here at Mosaic Learning.
Awesome. I'd like to. So there's a lot of learning platforms now. I mean, that's just there is every kind of learning thing and connection. Since COVID, it's really gotten us to focus on learning just online and stuff like that. I mean, it was going that way. How would you say you guys are innovative? What are you doing that says, hey, look at us. We are standing above?
Yeah, and so if you, I think it's a good question. And so, one of the things is we do demos, and we're on the road or over our own Combobulate product. Our core product is called Combobulate, to bring order to chaos. Yeah, that's our core product. It's awesome. And one of the things that we routinely get feedback on is that we're the only ones that combine all the facets of technology to really bring together the platform. And so if you look at our traditional learning management system, or even like a company or platform like Coursera, it's great technology, but it's not combining all the aspects and really adapting everything to the learner, to where they're using artificial intelligence and machine learning based on all the data that's being gathered from when I've got a VR goggle headset on and I'm moving my hand controls, or I'm on my keyboard and I'm mousing over answers, or I'm on my mobile phone and I'm scrolling and I really don't seem to master the content. There's no interface and there's no responsiveness that's and I don't want to use sort of a HTML5 term, but no responsiveness, if you will, that's adapting the interface and really adapting it to the learner to determine his or her true learning pathway. And so that's really what we're about. And If you look at it like the chair I'm sitting in today, the traditional learning management systems break down because they only have one leg of the stool. And so they tend to get wobbly and fall over, not adapting the experience of the learner. And we provide all 4 legs of the stool: data, mobile, AR, VR, and online learning through a traditional computer learning management system. And so that's what we're about.
I was gonna ask. So what are the 4?
Yeah.
What are the 4 legs?
Yeah.
And you just answered it because you
I mean,
swept by it really quickly, and I think I'm getting a vision of what they do. But could you kind of explain a little more, each 4 of those concepts and how they all gel together? Because I'm seeing the difference now. I'm seeing the innovation.
Yes.
But I want to know more.
Absolutely. And so if you think about it, right, if you've got your phone, you're kind of walled into, this is my learning experience on my phone, and I'm going to then disconnect. If you think about like AR, VR, and some of those cool commercials with like Facebook's not called Facebook anymore, but
Right.
you think about sort of putting on that headset, you're kind of walled into that environment, right? That reality. If you think about your desktop, right, and how you learn on your desktop, you're sort of walled into that, and the data is sort of over here, right? If you imagine the whole thing. Again, we're going to use the term combobulate, not matrix, right? If you imagine the whole thing as an interconnected universe, everything you do is something that's getting tracked, right? And obviously you have to opt into that for privacy reasons, but everything you do through every interface is getting tracked, and those experiences themselves are adapting to how you're interacting with the system. And so again, if it looks like you're guessing, it's changing the experience and getting that back to the instructor. If it looks like you're mastering the content and able to accelerate further, you're able to move in further. And so we're combining, again, all of those different facets of how you're interfacing with the data to create that combobulate ecosystem. Again, not the matrix ecosystem, but the combobulate ecosystem to adapt everything that you're getting in terms of inputs. And that's what makes us unique. No one else is really doing that in space.
So did I understand correctly in you saying earlier that you're doing that and being able to track that by eye movement? Is that kind of how you're doing it?
We're tracking everything: eye movement, mouse over events. If you got a VR headset on, hand movements, we're tracking everything. And
so essentially, how you're interacting within the platform you're on and able to judge that. That is awesome. I like that.
So are you basically? Is there a form of AI in it that kind of understands how you learn? Is that what it does? Or
well,
something?
if you think about it, it's a really good question. So if you think about it, in the traditional notion of a data lake, right? Swimming in a data lake. Imagine I'm a student and I'm in my student lake, if you will. You've got all the attributes and all the interactions that have taken place over the course of my learning history. It's all tied together, almost like a blockchain of events that take place with me as a student learner. And all of that is feeding a model that say, this is who I am as a student. And it's saying, this is how quickly I can progress through the content. This is how the interfaces should adapt to my learning style. Some of this is born out of, I remember when we first all went remote, and my son was sitting there really struggling with his coursework. He was 10 at the time, he's 11 now. And so in 5th grade, and, he's really struggling with it. And I'm trying to, look at him logging into a computer, Google Meet Classroom, and he's getting frustrated. He's, screaming a bunch and doing all these types of things. And then you stick a VR headset on him and put a video game on him, and, he's fine. And so I'm like, well, I have a solution to this, right? It's how do we again trick the brain into thinking that you're in this immersive environment. Again, if you're in a traditional VR environment, but you're in this immersive environment, and then how do we track the data that sort of aggregates to the student, so that I'm able to figure out at what point and what interface is best for the student, and how do I present the content to them that's adapted to their learning path. And so that's what we're about here doing with Mosaic Learning.
Wow,
that is awesome. I mean, I get it, and being able to understand, like you said, I mean, being able to understand how people are learning and what style fits them the best is going to help you tailor the content created to make sure that they can learn it the best and fastest way possible.
Because everybody's different.
Exactly.
Everybody's different, and we've traditionally had the same way to learn, no matter who you were.
Well, you think
some
of a classroom.
people succeed and thrive, and others don't. You're kind of picking it for them and kind of feeding them the right way for them to learn. Is that fair to say?
Correct. And so you're adapting the learning to their style. You're not just in the traditional classroom setting. I remember when I first started at the University of Washington, 21 years ago, and it was like herding cattle, right? You just sended students into
Right.
these large rooms. You had teaching assistants, and a professor would show up every once in a while, and it was the same curriculum, the same test. There was a bell curve, and so if you didn't pass, you failed out, and that was the end of you, if you will, in terms of your college career at that particular institution. And so we believe that all learners, and this is the democratization of learning and really espousing beliefs and values, that all learners have a chance to be successful regardless of learning disability or age, creed, race, ethnicity, color, or anything like that. And so the point and goal of technology is to really level the playing field and to take everything that we know about learning, put it online, and then make the learning adaptive and the interfaces adapted to the student. And so all students have a right and chance and outcome to succeed.
I love it.
Dang,
That's awesome.
That's cool.
So I mean that sounds like it's very awesome, but help me understand, how do you guys, like, who takes care of your technology, and what would people do if they wanted to try to come work for you or try to help out in this mission?
What does that look like? Your back end.
Yeah,
take us under the hood.
Yeah,
we're hiring and always open to have a sales conversation as well, for anyone that says, hey, my students or my learners are struggling, I need help. And so, happy to have conversations with both fronts. But, we're entire union shop. We're all domestic based here in the States. And so it's a little bit different of a tech company from that perspective.
That is different.
Yeah. We have, you don't hear about software companies necessarily, espousing sort of having a union presence, if you will. And so,
it's very rare.
That is rare.
Yep. And, it's great because, again, it's about leveling the playing field and, everyone rising with the tide. And so we have a profit sharing program for all of our employees that they all participate in. And, we're all, in this together. And, in terms of technology stacks, we've got a modern, AWS centric tech stack. And, we sort of all go from there. And, everyone participates in building components of the core and building different parts of the interfaces, and then certain customizations for sure for clients, and everyone contributes to the whole, so that in the end every student interfaces with the system, and the data is contiguous for that student and learner's pathway and experience.
So I'd like to know, that seems pretty on purpose.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and so why did you? Because we all know there's a lot of paths with the back end and technology, and there's cheap labor in other countries, and why did you guys kind of decide to do it the way you did? I have a feeling there's a reason behind that, or a story.
Yeah, absolutely. There aren't a lot of things in my experience that are accidental. I grew up watching like
Not
Back
the work.
to the Future. Right, and Doc Brown has this epiphany with a flux capacitor because he gets hit over the head. I think it was in his shower or something. I can't recall, but a lot of folks like to think that planning or technology are accidental. It's very much intentional. In our case, the business started in 2007 as its own entity. Prior to that, for a couple of years, it was kind of incubated at Mosaic, which is a vertical marketing and print business in Cheverly, Maryland. And so, it spun out in 2007, and it's continued to grow and expand since then. And it was really with an intentional and purpose to have a different type of company. And over the last 2.5 years, we've, been going about the business of instituting a transformation based around products. And we like to say next year is the year of the product, but really focusing a lot of what we're doing on building scalable products and services that adapt to different verticals, so that everyone can benefit from what we're doing here, and it's not so sort of purpose built, which is a lot of how the company grew up.
Nice, I like it.
So, question. So, how do you feel about the future of your technology? Do you guys have plans for changes? What do you see in the future for the company and its technology?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I'd like to think of the future. It's fun. I'm in the movie moment. We started with Matrix. It's sort of, so I'm going to go to Star Trek, Undiscovered Country. It's really about, for our case, paving the pathway to where everything is very simple and easy to use. And so, I've kind of, geeked out a little bit during this podcast and gotten very specific and technical. But at the end of the day, what we try to do and what our goal is to really make learning as simple as the iPhone, right? And so that's really for us kind of our undiscovered country. A lot of this stuff is very complex, right? I've talked about everything from, learning enabled blockchains to AI ML to artificial reality and virtual reality and LMS, and like there's all this complexity to it. Ultimately, what we want to drive is really a one-click experience for anyone that says, I have students that want to learn, or I'm a learner and I want to sign up. And so we then enable that learner with whatever devices make sense for them. And it's all very simple and easy to consume, is really our undiscovered country, because to date in the industry, it's all extraordinarily complex and we want to make it simple.
Absolutely, it is. So that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad to see that you can see a vision and see where you're going with it. And I think that's even better. I mean, it's all about, growth and learning. So kudos to you guys for that. So on an overall scale, though, help me understand, where do you think technology is going and where do you think it's going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now?
Specifically their technology?
No, just technology
in general. Yeah. I'm sorry for clarifying.
No, you're good.
Jumping on you. So this question, we're just kind of, what do you think? Where do you think the craziness is going to happen in the technology world specifically?
Yeah, so I it's always great as a technologist to sort of dream, but where I think it's headed is really marrying the science and the technology together. My wife is a PhD neuroscientist, and she and I have lots of spirited conversations. And, ultimately the goal of hooking something in the back of the brain is not too far off, although we don't want something like where wires sticking out. We're kind of wireless society now. We've kind of evolved from the original Matrix. Right. But, again, what we're about is, and this is getting into future tech, and so I'll answer it from that perspective and then sort of take it to high level, is how are we looking at the data and adapting the learning and using AI ML, and then what are the neurobiology implications of it, right? Again, I had one of our product owners was in here. We had our holiday party at Topgolf, which went off very, very well about 2 weeks ago. And so we flew, folks that are remote in, and everyone came in and we're together for the first time since the pandemic started. For all intents and purposes, we've had smaller groups together, but this is the first time we had almost everyone here, the majority of the company together in a single location. And so she was trying one of our, VR experiences, and she was going through, I think, repairing an HVAC unit or something like that. And then, my technical account manager sort of switched it out. His name is Sean. Switched out the experience, and all of a sudden she was on high steel, and she was like screaming and falling over. And I can sort of share the video if you want on the podcast. But within an instant, her mind clicked over to, I'm in a dangerous place, and I've got to sort of react to it. Right? It's sort of the fight or flight, primordial brain activity going on in that regard. And that's really what we're trying to do, is really say, okay, so we've got all this data of hundreds of thousands of students, and we've got all this technology sort of consuming that data. What is the neurobiology implication of it, and how, what's going on in the brain, for example, looking at it sort of an fMRI perspective, what's going on in the brain that's causing these different responses, and how can we manipulate that without going into someone's brain and, doing something that's sort of destructive that we don't have the ability to do. And how can technology influence that? And that's really, if I look at the next few years of what we're doing, it's really proving the science behind learning and memory so that we have that ability to do it, not in sort of a malicious way, but again, if I think about even myself, there's a huge difference in how I watch and consume statistics about football and how I watch and consume statistics about, ancient literature or something like that, or, literature from the Elizabethan era or whatever the case may be. And so if I look at how I can manipulate the learning and experiences and the technology to really trick my brain so I can consume information at all levels, at all velocities, then it makes a huge difference in learning outcomes. And so that's why I think technology is really headed, especially in this space, is really working with science so that all those outcomes are possible.
So you think sooner than later we're going to be very connected?
Yes.
Meaning
not a matrix and a combobulate.
But, yeah. And we're talking, and I see too, wireless, a little electrode instead of this big thing stuck into your head, just this tiny little electrode or something that could send information. I truthfully, how far? I mean, this is craziness talk.
No. So we're there. I was actually having a conversation with somebody a couple weeks back, and he was actually telling me right now there are actually 33 people in the world that have a chip in their brain. So Matthew, I'm not sure if you know about this, but he was actually, since we're based in Utah, he was actually telling me that Utah is becoming really big into neuroscience and how technology can kind of implement that. And what he was saying is that there's actually 2 companies that have put microchips in people. One company has done 32 and another company has only done 1. But they're still trying to figure out how this is working. And I apologize, I didn't get all of the information exactly what it's what it's doing. But he's really big into this as well. So I think you're right. I think that's where we are headed.
And Matthew, you guys want to be in on that bus?
I want to be the bus driver and create at least part of the bus.
Yeah.
I love it. I know I have seen the videos and stuff where they steer a rat because they have electrodes in the rat's head, and I've seen that kind of stuff. Man, it's both exciting and scary at the same time. Very cool. How far down the road do you think we are, Matthew? As far as from you guys and your perspective, I get that kind of it's your whole world. How far do you think we are from some kind of implant learning or connecting learning to your brain through that kind of system? Because that is the next step.
A system, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's a good question. We do a ton of work around electric theory, and so we still have a lot to learn and understand about how electric theory works in the brain, right? That's, you sort of have to walk, before you have to crawl, then walk, and then run. And so I think it's going to take at least a few more years and lots of sort of private and public funding to understand truly, work with companies like us and others too, to really understand how the brain works and how that, how that activity is both manifesting itself and fundamentally how you can manipulate it without causing harm, right? You don't want to cause harm. And then once that's in place, you probably need another, 3 to 5 years to sort of have prototyping in place, and then another, 3 to 5 years for sort of mass consumption and mass market, sort of moving beyond the early adopter phase to mass market and maturity. And so I think we're about 10 to 15 years out before that's there, but the science is so cool, right? The science is cool, the technology is cool, and we're at the forefront of really understanding and creating, connecting all the dots. And so we can get there, right? Because we're sort of the head of the pack. And so, I think we're 10 to 15 years out, but I look forward to the journey to get there.
Absolutely. Wow. I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, just being able to put in the time and the research to be able to invest into something like this, I think it's awesome because it is the future. I mean, being able to understand and learn and help people with their learning curve is going to be huge.
Yeah, I think you said it right. I don't want to be the one to do it the first time where they drill into my brain, but once they get it really figured out, then that would be exciting.
So not an early adopter.
Yeah, not on that one. Not an early adopter. Well, awesome. Matthew, this has been really, really cool.
So how can people reach out to you, Matthew, and how would they set up a demo for your products and things like that? Let's obviously try to get you some business and get people in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So go to mosaiclearning.com, go to combobulate.com, and you can get in touch with us that way. I'm also mcraft at mosaiclearning.com. Feel free to reach out to me directly. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Link to Matthew Kraft on LinkedIn, and happy to set up a further conversation about how we can help your learners and how we can help you really maximize your outcomes and sort of that learning ROI and build on that intellectual capital.
Awesome. It just hit me, Mosaic Learning. It just hit me what that means. You've just been talking about it. A bunch of different pieces and parts, right?
Yep.
Darn. Okay, I figured it out. It took me the show, but I figured it out. Mosaic Learning. Folks, check it out. Super exciting stuff. Matthew, again, thank you for being on the show. Any last words, Brad?
No, I'm good. I just maybe go out and be an early adopter.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's sign up for it. All right. Thanks for listening to The New IT. We will see you next time.
All right. Perfect. All right.